Hey there, guys. My name is Dustin. This is Atheist Son of a Preacher Man, Episode 1, Coming Out of the Other Closet. I'd like to start with a couple apologies. One, I know I have a face for radio. You'll get over it. Two, I've never made a video like this. This is the first time I've ever touched a webcam. So there's not going to be any graphics or cutaways to other videos. It's just cheap and simple for now until I learn more. Also wanted to start, I know arguments of this nature and debates about religion and different cultures can get pretty venomous. And while I am sarcastic and while I do not believe in God, and I know that automatically offends some people, I'm not trying to be hateful. I don't believe in being hateful. I can have a problem with someone's belief, someone's opinion, someone's behavior, someone's lifestyle. I do not think I am better or smarter than anyone just because they're religious and I think what they believe in is untrue. And I would like the comments to stay civil. Argue all you want, debate, tell me if you think I'm wrong, argue with each other. That's fine. But there's no need to be, really immature and hateful about it. I don't want to see any racist, homophobic, or anti-religion talk that gets too personally, mean. I'll delete any comments that I think go too far in either direction. Because while I'm an atheist, on top of loving my dad very much, who is a preacher, I've got Christian friends, and I would never offend them on purpose. Sometimes you are going to offend people, but I don't think you should be doing that on purpose and just to get a rise out of people. It's immature. So let's try to keep it friendly, even when we're disagreeing with each other. You'll have to bear with me. I've had a bunch of coffee, and I've never done a video like this, so I'm going to be doing backtracking, probably a little bit of stuttering. I want to start off by just giving a quick history of how I came to be what I consider, an atheist, how I started calling myself that. I've never really been a Christian. I grew up in a Christian church. I grew up in a good church, nice people, accepting, just nice, kind people. And even though I used to use the word Christian to define myself, I used it in that very broad and basic way that a lot of American Christians do. They just don't know what other words you use to define themselves. It's like, well, I'm definitely not a Muslim, so I guess I'm a Christian. That's the church I grew up in, so I guess that's what I am. And so that's the only reason I ever used the word Christian to define myself. But I was never really a Christian in that I thought you had to believe in those Christian beliefs in order to get some prize at the end of your life. I never believed that, even as a kid. Very young, I started, just doubting a lot of the things I would hear in church. And when I was 17, I did a very strange thing that it seems not a lot of modern Christians, at least ones around my age, have done. I read the Bible. Not just some verse that a priest or a preacher told me I should read for inspiration. I started at the beginning and read it through to the end. And to me, that's what everyone should do. You can't claim a belief in a system without knowing the source of that belief. So saying you believe in the Bible without reading it is just ignorant. So I read the entire Bible twice, actually. Once when I was 17, another time when I was 22. I don't remember most of it. It's pretty dense and hard to follow at times. But what you're hearing right now is the trains that pass by my house every couple hours. So I read the Bible and became even less of a Christian than I already was. But I didn't stop believing in God right then. Because to me, God existed before the Bible and before religion, if God existed. So therefore, he exists outside of religion and can exist without a religion. So you don't have to be religious to believe in God. So I came to that conclusion as a teenager. So for a few years I held on to a belief and a vague notion of God without thinking it had to follow a book. Because what are the odds that one book out of all the books just has all the answers? That never made sense to me. And as time went on, that belief I was trying to hold on to just in general of God just dissipated. It just started evaporating. You know, bit by bit, I became more comfortable with the idea that there is no God. I didn't do it out of anger or rebellion. I've never had a very rebellious personality. I just slowly stopped believing in God. And I stopped seeing any reason to believe in God. And I failed to be able to see how God was really helping people. You know, for every person that says that their belief in God made them happier, I saw two people who were miserable even though they had this relationship with God or with Jesus. And so it just slowly went away, and I started reading other people's arguments, people that are smarter than me, much smarter than me, and I was just interested in, you know, how other people were explaining how they came to their beliefs, and one day I just had to admit it. Well, atheist is the word that defines me, so that's what I'll call myself regardless of who approves of it. And so that brings me around to my dad, who became a pastor in my late 20s, but was always religious. My dad is an awesome guy. I love my dad very much. We get along famously. We always have. And I don't rub it in his face. I don't say things like, oh, you believe in invisible made-up things and an invisible magician in space. And he doesn't say things like, oh, you're going to hell because you disagree with me. My father is one of the few people out there that understands true love. True love for a child, or true love just for mankind. His love for me, his son, is unconditional, where a lot of parents, they don't want to admit it, but their love for their kids are conditional. They love their kid as long as their kid holds up to their idea of their kid. They love their concept of their kid, whereas my dad, and other parents too, they love their children, and that's it. My dad is proud of me. He thinks I'm a good person. And we see each other for our intentions, which I wish more people would do. My dad's very charitable. He helps poor people. He helps hungry people. He spends several days at the church, you know, not just there once a week to repeat some BS sermon. He puts a lot of study into it. And I may not agree with what he believes in, but I respect his effort. And I respect the fact that he's using his religion as a tool to do good. Religion can be used to do good just as easily as it can be used to do evil. He's chosen to use it for good. And I think his existence on earth is very valuable. He's a role model, even though I don't agree with him, about the things he believes in. But I've always looked up to his heart. He's not perfect, neither am I. We make mistakes, but it's never out of malice. We want to help people. We both have a basic desire to make people feel better and to be happier than they are and to take some of the misery and pain out of people's lives if we can. So it's like, even though our paths look different in life, I feel they both have a similar goal, which is to make the world a slightly better place, even if it's just by a fraction, just in our little corner of the world. So no matter how many things we disagree on, we see each other's hearts, and we love each other for that. And I wish I saw more of that. So back to my road to atheism, what I finally started thinking was, and the way I like to argue, I'm not a scientist, I'm not Richard Dawkins, I'm not as smart as those people. Certain people argue in this serpentine way that, it's so long-winded and confusing. If you're not, learned in that area, by the time you get to the end, you're confused, so you assume that they won the argument because you don't know how to respond. I don't argue that way. I don't try to. I try to do more baby steps arguing. I I try to have you with me every step of the way. So even if you don't agree with my conclusion, you're not confused as to how I came to it. So these videos are not going to be to prove that I'm right and y'all are wrong. That's a silly goal to have. I'm just explaining me. And I'm just doing these because, you know, it's for fun, boredom. I just like talking about stuff. So here's my little baby steps argument and how I came to believe it was logical to think there probably is no God. We'll see how far you can stay with me on it. So for starters, there have been many other gods in the past that were devoutly worshipped and believed in. I know you're still with me there. Gods, goddesses existed before Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Others were made up during, others have been made up after. There's multiple gods and goddesses today that other hundreds of millions of people believe in, other than the God that Christians, Muslims, and Jews believe in. So you're with me on the fact that gods get made up, and these people have faith in those gods, but you think they're wrong even though they have faith. So faith doesn't make something true. We know that, so you're still, I assume you're agreeing with me. So gods get made up. Faith doesn't make something real. You can believe in something with all your heart, and it can still be non-existent. So we agree on all that. We've established that. So I'm just making up a number here. If 100 gods and goddesses can be made up and completely untrue, no matter how much people believe in them, what is so crazy about saying it's 101 instead of 100? Because I believe who people refer to as God was made up in the exact same way Christians believe Zeus, Horus, Ram, Baal, Ishtar, Shiva, Krishna, Vishnu were all made up. And I believe all those gods, including the God of the big three religions, was made up to fill in the gaps of knowledge. And there used to be some pretty big gaps in knowledge. And we still have gaps in knowledge, but those gaps aren't as big. And that's why you see religious belief slowly dying out in certain parts of the world. And more atheists, or not necessarily atheists, but at least agnostics popping up. People that can no longer feel comfortable saying, oh, I'm a Christian, when they really know that's not true. And I've heard some people say, well, where do you get your morals from? Like they don't know any atheists, so that they think we just run around getting hammered and doing drugs. And that always kind of confused me, because since when are most people moral? I see so much hate and anger and ignorance, willful ignorance, from people that are believers. God doesn't stop any of them from doing anything wrong. God's never stopped a rape or a war or someone killing a kid, theft, lies, adultery. Those things don't get stopped with the belief in God. So where does someone get off asking an atheist, where do you get your morals? Because I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, but like I said before, never out of malice. I believe in being honest most of the time. I'd say I'm honest 95% of the time, which is about 60–70% more than most people. I believe in trying to help people. I believe in not being too greedy. I just believe in trying to make people around you happy when you can, and that's the closest you're going to get to a meaning of life to me. To me, there's no meaning in life until you add meaning to your life, and if that can be positive, that's a good thing. So those are my morals. Just try to be nice, and I don't need to think someone's watching me from the sky, monitoring me, to make me want to do that. Because I feel like if you only do something good because you think someone's watching, you're not really being good. You're just being scared. And I also want to talk about the behavior I see between the religious people I know and the non-religious people I know. And this is not meant to say this group is better than that group. I'm just going by my little corner of the world, just the people I know. While there are examples like my dad, who uses his belief in a very positive way. I say most of the religious people around my age don't quite do that. They seem to screw up the most, get in the most trouble. They seem to wander in their life the most and to be very confused. Once again, these are just talking about the people I know. And I think it might have something to do with the fact that they're waiting for an answer from an invisible source. They're waiting to be told inside what they consider their soul what to do. And this whole time that they're waiting to be told what to do, they're not getting off their asses and doing what they should do. And so they just end up in this cycle of sin and guilt, but then they get forgiven, whether they just talk to God and feel forgiven because they asked for it, or they go to some little box where a priest is in there and they tell them all their dirty laundry, and the priest gives them a formula to go get forgiven, and that's it. Well, they're not getting motivated to change their behavior. They just got, their sin wiped clean, so now they get to start again with the same behavior. And I'm just seeing a lot of that. People just in this cycle of just sin, guilt, forgiveness, sin, guilt, forgiveness, and they can't seem to get out of it. And most, not all, most of the non-religious, be it agnostic or atheist, people I know, they just seem a little happier. Not all of them, but most of them seem a little happier, more content with their life, because they're not waiting for answers, they're making answers. When tragedy arises, they don't think, oh, what's the meaning of this? They just think about how to go on and live the rest of their life. And this is, I'm sure you could find a bunch of examples in your corner of the world that might go against, what I just said. I can only speak for myself. I'm from a small town in South Texas. Not like ride your tractor or your horse to school, small town, but still pretty small town. Not a lot of thought diversity there when I was growing up. So I'm about done with my rambling episode 1. This was just meant to be an intro into what I want from this show, why I'm doing it, who I am. The other episodes will be a little bit more, they'll run more smoothly and be better. If you have any questions, you can send me a message if there's any topic you want me to hit. Don't waste your time and ask me to explain what caused the Big Bang. If I think the Big Bang happened and therefore God must be real, if I can't give you an answer, I won't even play that game. I just like to talk about human nature, human behavior. But if there's a subject you would like me to hit on, just let me know. Let's just have some nice, fun discussions. And even if you don't like these videos, I'm also a massage therapist and will occasionally be posting videos on that. I'm going to try to show people how to help get rid of people's chronic headaches and migraines in the near future. So even if you hate these videos, hopefully you find some use out of something I post. And so I'll just leave you with the quote of the day, which is, oh, and a lot of the quotes, I'm never going to do it on purpose, but it's hard to come up with anything original. You're probably going to hear something I say that someone else said. I'm not doing it on purpose. So some of what I say might be paraphrasing something that Dawkins said or that Hitchens said. And out of those two, I prefer Dawkins. He's nicer. So the quote of the day is, if hate and violence and sin can exist within the walls of any religion, then love, peace, and decency can exist outside the walls of all of them. So I will see y'all soon for episode 2, entitled Tim Tebow and Joel Osteen Hate Jesus. I'll explain later. Okay, well, you guys have a good night.